Well, hey there, let's dive right into this review for South of Midnight. Set in Louisiana, which I do have a bit of a history with because I do live in the Florida Panhandle area. Having traveled to Louisiana a few times in my life and being put directly into their culture via Mardi Gras being pretty big around here. Also, a lot of people here really enjoy the Saints football team, so that's also a thing. And although I'm not extremely close with the Bayou and the Cajun lifestyle, I know a lot about it, and I have experienced the culture many times throughout my life. Also, just generally being from the South had me walking into this game hoping for a lot of fun elements on display pertaining to random Southernisms and other tidbits. It pulls off some of these well, but others not so well. But with this short little intro out of the way, let's get on to the story. It starts off with the main character Hazel packing up and preparing to go down to the local shelter, which her mom helps run. She's waiting for her mom to come back so that way they can finish the packing since they are about to get smacked by a hurricane. It's coming right into their town and it's basically on their doorstep, causing a torrential downpour and some intense weather to follow. Her mother finally arrives a little later than expected, causing them to get into a bit of an argument as to why her mother is always helping others and not really there to help Hazel or herself, especially when there's a crisis such as this. Hazel leaves to go check on the others in the neighborhood, and while still being angry at her mother due to the argument that they'd just had, she returns home and is about to walk up the steps to enter the front door, and bam, the entire house is swept away into the river. That river is coursing through right next to where their home was, and it basically becomes massive due to an insane flash flood, causing it to take their home straight down the river, along with her mother inside of it. This begins our story of tracking down Hazel's mom, learning more about the history of our family on our mother and father's side, the people and the community around us, along with all the magical and mystical elements of the world that they inhabit. There's a giant catfish that we set free. He then helps us on our adventure to keep tracking down our mom. He also helps us with random clues about all the darkness and creepy creatures that are attacking people. And I'm gonna run through the major stuff here that happens in the story very quickly. South of Midnight has been out for a few months, so I will be spoiling it here. If you're still interested in the story, go ahead and skip to this time. But honestly, there's not a lot to spoil here and you won't be missing much. We come across our grandmother while out trying to find our mom, and this grandma is the one from our dad's side. She is very secretive, but also very wealthy. Something about her seems off. She doesn't really want to help us to find our mom at all, and because of that, we strike out on our own, meeting new people along the way and sorta helping them as we go through every zone. And I say sorta because we do kind of resolve some things, but there isn't any payout for any of this. One example is the first creature or thing that we come across is that giant catfish. He's being held captive by the spirit of a young boy named Benji, who is now a giant massive tree. He was left in that tree to die by his older brother. Benji, as a kid, had special needs, and during that time in the South, it was not something that people took too kindly. Which is why I think his brother felt the need to protect him by putting him out of his misery. I don't truly know. We don't know why he does this. So he ends up trapping his brother in the tree to die, and Benji ends up combining his soul with the tree and becomes absolutely fucking massive. This is all, again, for unknown magical Bayou reasons. Nobody really knows. But it's a very sad and tragic story. We meet the older brother, and then we move along to see what happened with Benji. Then that's it. No payout on exactly what happens, why the brother did this. We don't get to know how this affected him or the others around him either. Just nothing. That's it. They just say, yep, he killed his brother and that was a bad thing, and then you save the catfish and move along. This sort of storytelling repeats a lot throughout the game. Most of the storytelling is done through very basic cutscenes that are usually just a few short minutes, or some written papers that are collectibles that you can recover off of the main beaten path. By the end of the story though, you learn that the grandma is actually the really bad lady. She basically did anything and everything that she could to revive her lost daughter, who of course would have been Hazel's aunt if not her passing as a young child. Grandma, on the other hand, does not care for Hazel's dad whatsoever, and we don't learn too much about why in the story. We just know that Grandma's a piece of shit, and it kind of stops there. It's such a weird experience where the world sets up these incredible stories and characters, The way the story is told through some of the music and the way which we will discuss more in a moment, it's genuinely engaging. But then you get these very static cutscenes that are, while pretty, they're also pretty boring. And there's no payout for them whatsoever. We move on to the next area, we learn a little more about what happened there, who it affected, never a why or a how really, and we never really get to know what's going to happen moving forward either. It's like we're there to see exactly what caused a very specific character moment, and then we're moved along to the next one, which is pretty sad because I enjoyed all of these setups for the characters in the story, but they never had proper closure. So this made the story just very underwhelming overall, but when you're not watching these cutscenes, you're running and jumping around or fighting enemies. Unless you didn't, because I didn't. By that I mean, around the halfway point there is a setting that I could turn on that allowed you to skip random combat sections. And so I did. I would never normally do this in a game, but they had this setting in the game for a reason, and I think I know why. Because it's absolutely fucking boring. The combat consists of you having a very small number of special abilities, a basic attack, and a dodge, and that's it. You move around in these very tiny arenas with minimal enemy variety, you dodge, attack, use that special ability in no specific order, and as long as you really just don't get hit too much, it's not that difficult, but it's also not engaging either. I still fought every single boss fight, but like I said, around the halfway point into the game, I realized these random encounters consisted of the exact same rinse and repeat basic combat. And I was like, hell no, I'm gonna turn this shit off, and I never looked back. The boss fights, on the other hand, normally they have something a little bit more unique to them, requiring specific dodging and attacking. They also have some very fun arenas to be able to change things up a little, where you have to attack the boss in a very specific manner. These fights were nothing fantastic, but overall a highlight compared to the normal fights that are super simple with this combat system. You also only have a singular weapon, leaving the combat without much diversity or change up as you progress through the game. But moving on to movement, man, did I hope that they would stick the landing here, and yes, I did mean that pun. You run along walls, you glide, you jump around, and you dash. None of this really feels good. It's all floaty, not precise, and doesn't allow you to do anything with it, other than exactly what the developer has set in front of you to use it for. The walls that you can run on are very specific. You can't just run along any wall that you find. You can't go land on something and then try to glide over to something else because there's going to be an invisible barrier there that blocks you out. Along with the imprecise nature of the movement altogether, it never quite felt right. There's also a mechanic that comes up on occasion that has you flying through a wind tunnel that you barely dodge things that sorta kinda get in your way. This was so damn boring. During these parts of the game, I felt like I was playing a PS2 game. Nothing felt good, and when there was a small flow to things, it was only because you had to do it very specifically, based upon how things were placed in front of you. Not because you figured something out, it was trying something challenging or cool, and then it worked out enough because you had enough skill to accomplish it. All of the movement just felt kinda rough. But with my two biggest gripes out of the way being combat and movement for the gameplay, let's get on to my two favorite things, which was the art/graphics and the music. Starting with the art direction and graphics here, as you've seen with the gameplay that I'm showing, it's absolutely fucking gorgeous. The painterly art style, intense colors, and vibrant nature in the foreground and background of every zone, there is a sight to behold in every section of the game. There is always some sort of ambiance going on in each level as well, with random creatures scurrying around, something moving in the distance, to show that this is a legit world and not just a PNG plastered onto the background. Some of my favorite moments in the game were watching the little creatures in the hollows, because you can enter these little burrowed sections of the game by controlling your little puppet guy Crouton, where you go and see into these little holes where living spaces for these random creatures are. Rabbits, foxes, and other forest dwellers are hiding from the Haints, which are the bad guys' names, and other darkness around. These little sections are the most cozy and vibe-like areas, and every new zone that you enter is distinct in its own right though, relating to its overall boss or theme for that zone. From cows being stuck on a roof of a flooded building, or pigs playing around in the mud. The art style with its stop-motion aesthetics, claymation-looking characters, and so on make it a real treat. There's an opening scene that is pure claymation, and I honestly would have enjoyed this as a recurring theme throughout the game. I personally enjoy stop-motion stuff along the lines of Tim Burton movies. It would have made South of Midnight feel much more unique compared to other games out there that use generic cutscenes, but the colors, the world they built, they're all fantastical and beautiful here. And next you better listen up because we're talking about the music and the audio. Your attacks and movements have a whimsical whoosh noise to them to represent the magical powers on display. The enemies all sound disturbing and crunchy with their pointed sounds directly entering your ears like the pinprick that they are. Ambient noises in each zone had me standing still in the moment just to absorb the atmosphere. Crickets, birds, frogs, and other random creatures in the collection of noises. This all helps build out the areas that you enter just to show you, hey, it's not just a set piece. They put a ton of thought into these zones and they make them sound real. Doing a hell of a good job along the way. Voice acting isn't anything crazy. I thought it was overall good with the accents being portrayed with that southern and Bayou-isms that you can expect. But I never felt these characters weren't really from Louisiana. They all felt authentic and they felt like someone that I had either met before or that I could believe was real. I don't think any of the cast really stood out other than the catfish. His lines are delivered and written the best across the game. Every boss does have a unique song, every zone has a different tempo to it, and a small thing that caught my attention on the regular is these simple touches of humming when you dash and jump around. Little things like this add to the uniqueness of South of Midnight, and they do add that bit of flavor that I wish they just kept up more along the way. Finally, I do want to talk about progression and level design here. It's going to be short though, so stick with me. There is a skill tree and you get some upgrade materials by going slightly off the beaten path, and that's it. You find the currency for increasing your very small smattering of abilities, and they don't do anything to enhance the gameplay, and due to the linear nature of the skill tree, I never felt like I had much of a choice or that it really mattered. Plus you get so many upgrade materials that you can max out your character by about the halfway point in the game, meaning the slight searching that you did around the areas became rather pointless by the later half of the game. Now, this is extremely linear and the levels have you go basically in a straight line. If you veer off that straight and narrow path, you take about 2 steps off, you find an item, and then you return to that same path. It's not very rewarding, and it's almost tedious to do so. Nothing interesting takes place in these little steps that you take off that path. You're not even rewarded with a pretty view, and how sad is that? You just nab that upgrade and keep chugging along. It's boring. You also sorta randomly change outfits as the story continues, but you can't revert to an older outfit when you want, and there aren't any to unlock otherwise. You just get that one because of story elements, and then you keep going. Getting into the end of this review, I've had a few gripes for the game, and I won't lie and say that I enjoyed most of it, because I didn't. I almost stopped playing it. The story was very lazy and the characters started off strong, but then they ended off poorly. The combat was repetitive, progression was limited, it felt like I was playing a bare bones PS2 or early PS3 game, or something around the lines of the generation in the mid-2000s. The sounds, the art style, and the setting for the game though is really the best part. I stuck through playing this game mostly because of this, and Huggin' Molly is a treat and a highlight for the game, along with Two-Toed Tom Man. Both of those two guys are the best parts for sure. I just wish that they kind of doubled down with this and did more. For as many features as I did like and enjoy about the game, I had pretty much the same number of things I disliked about the game. I remember that even in the final zone, nearing the final boss fight, I was still getting prompts on my screen that told me to jump. Why was I getting a reminder to jump when I had done so over 800 times? in the last 10 hours of playing this game. Had I failed a jump or died from jumping incorrectly? No, I was just walking near a ledge and it randomly gave me this friendly reminder. I don't know why it keeps doing this all the way up to the end of the game, but you get random little prompts on the screen that just are pointless by the time you've played the game more than 2 or 3 hours. It makes it feel frustrating at its worst, and then the game is just a little quirky at its best. South of Midnight is not a full price game though. It's only $40 in a world where everything else is $70 and then going up to $80 or $90 soon. I think that if you go into it knowing what to expect, that this actually might be a pretty okay price point for you, but otherwise wait for sale or play it on Game Pass. Pay for a month of Game Pass, complete it, and then move on. I do hope the developer Compulsion Games keeps on this path though, because I feel like they really had something special here, but I felt like they just fell short on this attempt. So if they do make a sequel, I really hope that the actual gameplay and systems are just more compelling. But that is going to be it for this review. I'm glad if you stuck all the way through to the end, and I appreciate you. But please do all that dumb YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time.